just after 4:15. But in the meantime, we're to change sport. It's time for Formula One. It's qualifying in the Netherlands Grand Prix. And once again, we say good afternoon to Kai Bacchini.
Yeah, qualifying hour is ready to get underway as one of the most important sessions of the weekend is about to commence. Zandvoort, a circuit that is notoriously difficult to overtake at, so qualifying is going to be so important. Out of the last 5 years, all of them races have been won from pole position. So what happens now could dictate what happens on Grand Prix Sunday. 4.2 kilometers of this circuit nestled in the sand dunes. It's going to be a dusty surface for the drivers to navigate over this qualifying session, and who can get themselves on that shortest run down to pole position. We'll find out in about an hour's time. Alongside me, Mark Priestley is going to be taking us through the action. Former mechanic turned broadcaster man of many talents. How are we feeling for this one, Mark?
Yeah, excited about this one. We've had a pre-running of this, of course, being a sprint weekend. So we had sprint qualifying, took place yesterday, and in that situation it was George Russell that came out on top with a very, very clean lap. But importantly, it was super close between the top four drivers. Not really anything between them. The teams are all very close to each other, and the drivers within those teams also very close. So this is going to be a difficult one to call, but as you rightly said, the importance on getting that pole position was highlighted in the sprint that happened early on today, where overtaking was so difficult to do.
And in that sprint race earlier, it was dry all the way through. As soon as the checkered flag was dropped onto the circuit, so did the rainfall, and it's going to be interchangeable over the course of the weekend. F1 correspondent Andrew Benson is with us. How's the weather looking for the moment, Andrew?
It's lovely now, actually. It was raining earlier, but it's bright blue sunshine. I can see the orange-clad fans in the grandstand opposite the pits all singing and dancing, waving their arms in the air. It's a proper festival atmosphere, as this race has become famous for. Logistically, it's a bit of a challenge, but they're all in at the moment. And, yeah, qualifying should be interesting. It's looking very, very close at the front between Mercedes, Ferrari and McLaren particularly. There was a sort of suspicion after the sprint that maybe Ferrari had underutilised the best car. Whether they still have the best car come qualifying after everyone's made changes to their setups remains to be seen.
Andrew, the official word is it's a 10% chance of rain at some point during qualifying. I appreciate that's pretty low, but the wind looks like it might have picked up a little bit. Is that right?
It's very, very windy. It's been windy all day, Mark. I think the thing about the rain is that it's been one of those weekends, very like a typical British summer, not like the British summer we've just had, where you're never quite sure what you're going to get. We're obviously right next to the North Sea here in Zandvoort. The rain's been sort of blowing across in bands all weekend. At the moment, it doesn't look like there's going to be any rain, but then you would have said the same probably at the start of the sprint, and that the rain missed the sprint by literally about 5 seconds because it rained immediately. George Russell crossed the line pretty much, didn't it?
Yeah.
Well, Andrew, the festival atmosphere continues on. No rain for the moment. Hands are still waving in the grandstand as everyone parties on. Andrew, what's going to be the music of choice that's out there at the moment?
Yeah, he's gone.
Oh, well, I guess we'll find out later.
Andrew Benson famously doesn't do music.
Well, I guess we'll have to just hope. Well, I wish that we could be in that atmosphere right now. I wish we had some techno music in the commentary box.
Yeah, well, we can make that happen if you like, mate, but it could be distracting. Listen, I think that we're in for something pretty intense here, right? Because the normal qualifying system, of course, resumes. Freedom of which tyres to run on. 3 different segments. And we'll knock out 5 drivers in the first, 6 drivers in the first, and so on until we get down to our final top 10 shootout at the last part of this qualifying. So the intensity is going to start building. We would expect the top 4 or 5 teams to still be the top 4 or 5 teams after the summer break. We haven't seen major swings in performance, little upgrades here and there on a number of the cars, as you can hear them rolling out of the garages just to start queuing up in the pit lane ahead of a green light. Upgrades up and down the field, no major obvious signs that we've had a dramatic shift in the pace between teams. So it's all still to play for. It's all going to be super close, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, green light is about to emit in about 30 seconds time at the end of the pit lane. The Mexican wave goes through the Dutch grandstand as the fans are all ready for F1 action to return to the Zandvoort circuit. Sprint race weekend, the first time we've had a sprint weekend in the 5 years of Zandvoort since it has returned, and it's very much been welcomed by all of the teams, all of the drivers and all of the fans around the circuit, meaning that instead of the 3 practice sessions that we would normally have coming out of the summer break, allowing all the drivers to get back into that racing format, shake off the cobwebs and get themselves ready again, they've had 1 practice session and then they were thrown straight into sprint qualifying yesterday, with the sprint race being this morning. It's got to be difficult for the drivers, especially for the likes of Yuki Tsunoda, who's been out of an F1 seat for so long, hasn't driven this generation of car, and now he's thrown into the deep end. 1 practice session and it's into quality.
Yeah, it's difficult, but it's mostly difficult in terms of getting prepared for the sprint segments of the weekend. Of course, they're now done. Although it's a sprint, and it's sprint qualifying and then the sprint we had earlier on, although that's not a traditional practice session, it is still track time. And what it does give the teams and drivers is a huge amount of information and learning that can be beneficial moving into the main Grand Prix. So effectively what you got in the sprint was a first stint of a Grand Prix, and so you get a picture of how are the tyres going to last over a long stint length like that, when the cars are a bit heavier on fuel. Where are the overtaking opportunities, because it's a competitive race scenario. There didn't seem to be too many overtaking opportunities, so can you start playing with strategy to try and give your drivers the opportunity to get past, even if it happens to be in the pit lane? That's what the teams will have learned an awful lot from, albeit a sprint weekend. So I think there's been a lot of learning. The real challenge is when you bring a lot of upgrades, technical upgrades to the car, you're not getting the traditional practice time to just bolt sensors on, to collect data, to do the sort of calm run plans that you'd love to do, because you're straight into the competitive side.
Now, talking about data, one thing that I found very interesting from the sprint race was Charles Leclerc. He made his way onto the soft compound tyres, did Leclerc, and he's tried to do everything he can to get as much data for that Ferrari team. Ferrari made a very smart strategical decision to split the strategy between their drivers, which many teams didn't do. Hamilton being the driver that went out on the mediums and completed that 24-lap race distance on the medium tyres. But Charles Leclerc proved that those soft tyres still have pace and still have life after 24 laps, making that move into second position on a dying Lando Norris. He was really struggling for tyre wear and tyre grip throughout that race. Leclerc was able to take advantage of that and get himself up into a second place result. But Ferrari, in comparison to all the other big hitting teams that stuck with that medium compound, now have extra data on that soft compound.
Yeah, they do. They will have learnt an awful lot, and I think that the biggest thing that we learnt from looking on was that there didn't seem to be an enormous difference in performance, and certainly not in terms of how the tyres degrade between the medium and the soft tyres. So not only did Ferrari get that information, but actually everybody else watching on, the other teams, will have also taken something from that. It might just give an alternate option to people when they're formulating their strategy for the Grand Prix. I think in terms of Lando Norris, it was more about overall car pace than it might have been about his tyres degrading on those mediums. They just don't seem like they've quite clicked around this circuit. It's not quite suiting the strengths. They've got strengths in high-speed corners, and this circuit doesn't have many of those.
Well, first laps now coming in on the board. It's Yuki Tsunoda who has the fastest time for the moment, but Oliver Bearman is on a flying lap as well and finds himself with a purple Sector 1, rotates down the gears into third as he gets the car pointed into 9 and will hit the brakes hard once again into 10, carry a bit of rolling speed. He will coast through the mid-corner, plant the accelerator on the exit, and now down towards the second heaviest braking zone of the lap, one of the trickiest sections through 11 and 12. You need to hit the apex of 11 hard and commit into 12, using the banking to help rotate the car, similar to what he'll be doing now through 13 and 14, using all 19 degrees of banking to allow that car to open up onto the straight, get a little bit of a slipstream. He'll actually bail out out of that one. So Bearman not happy with the times he was putting out on the board, but seemingly was pushing for the majority of that lap with a purple first sector, finding pace in that Haas car. They need to find it. It's been such a struggle in the second half of the first half of the season. I know that's a mouthful to say, but Haas started off so strong in the beginning of the season, proving that they were going to be a high midfield contender, and then it all just seemed to fall apart race upon race. It got worse upon worse, no matter how many upgrades they brought.
Well, I think what you've actually seen is that the midfield has become hotly contested as the season is drawing on. There's developments coming left, right and centre for a lot of those teams, and more again this weekend. So that midfield battle has become really, really close and very, very tense. So whether it was Haas chopping away or others moving forward, either way their relative position is not quite as strong as it was at the beginning. This is a really tricky part of qualifying here. It's a tricky circuit. You just talked about a couple of corners, some really technical sections that are challenging for drivers, particularly with these cars. But also we've got all of the cars on the circuit during this part of qualifying. No one's been eliminated yet, so everybody trying to find a gap, particularly towards the end of the session. It's going to be really tricky to find your way through, get a clear lap and a clear run, which is exactly what you need. Being hampered by traffic here will cost you massively.
So your pole position time in sprint qualifying from yesterday was a 1:11.567, which was set by the Mercedes man of George Russell. Continued on with a dominant lights to flag victory in the sprint race with the fastest lap to just secure it in his place. Hamilton currently the fastest on the timing order with a 1:13.4. Lawson and Verstappen are going to follow second and third, with Leclerc in fourth, and it's both of the Racing Bulls drivers in fifth and sixth. Racing Bulls with a great amount of pace.
Interestingly, the wind direction has turned around about 45 degrees from the direction that it's been all weekend so far, and although that might not seem too significant, because we're looking at sort of around about just less than 2 miles per hour, 2 meters per second in terms of wind speed, it's not dramatic. It is gusty and it is blustery, and that wind direction change can have a significant impact on the cars, on the aerodynamics of the cars, and what the drivers feel when they get through certain parts of the corner, how those aero components on the car are working. The wind can either help or it can detract from your downforce. So that's an interesting one to keep an eye on. Hamilton is currently fastest with a 13.4, but that's well over a second slower than we've had in the faster sections of qualifying for the sprint yesterday.
Yeah, still plenty of time to be found on the board. Track temperature and air temperature a little bit higher than what we saw earlier on this morning. Air temperature of 18.3 degrees and track temperature of 34. So 8 degrees higher than what we saw for the sprint race earlier on this morning. Drivers will be able to utilize that in terms of how much they're able to push the car, how much they can trust the grip levels underneath them. And Norris will trust the grip levels out of 14 and across the line to set a new precedent and a new fastest lap of a 1:13.060. It's not going to be long until we break that 1:13 barrier and eke our way into the 1:12s. Kimi Antonelli, never mind Oscar Piastri, might be the first to be able to do so as he makes his way through 11 and 12 now. Slowly but surely makes his way around the track. Well, not slowly at all in the second sector, as he had a purple second sector to his name. The Aussie has been on fire this weekend, still proving there's a debate on who's the number one driver in that McLaren team. But if you're going off the fastest laps at the moment, you have to say Oscar Piastri, as he pips his teammate by 0.2 of a second. Kimi Antonelli can't do any better than either of the McLaren drivers. And what does George Russell have in the bag after a sprint quali pole and a sprint race win? It's enough to split the McLarens, but not enough to jump Piastri.
It's not enough to jump Piastri, but importantly for him, it is still quicker than his young teammate and championship rival Kimi Antonelli, and it's that psychological battle that he's done well in winning so far this weekend. He took victory in the sprint earlier on, he got pole position for the sprint yesterday, so this is a weekend, and let's be honest, it's been a rare weekend, and it's still a long way to go, but it's a rare weekend where he's dominated the Mercedes partnership this weekend. So that's what he needs to do, because that's where he's been struggling, and that gets in your head when it happens over and over again. To have him back on top, at least for now, is a good sign for George.
I think it was a much needed summer break for George Russell. Was able to have that time off, to be able to unwind, as we saw in the press conference after the race at Spa-Francorchamps. I think that was the most defeated we've ever seen George Russell. He almost seemed lost in the car, wasn't sure what was underneath him, wasn't sure in his own ability as well. And we as fans, we as spectators, know that George Russell has that ability, was the championship favourite coming into this season, and just hasn't been able to get those results over his teammate. Whether that be a competitive mindset, and whether that knocks his confidence, having 19-year-old second-year driver getting those results that you would be wanting yourself as a teammate, surely it has to play in his mind, because at Mercedes, you've got to sit back and think, well, who's the number one driver? Who do you support the most? And who do you put preference to?
Well, I think, look, it's easy to look at these guys and think they're sort of some sort of superhumans, but the reality is they are just humans. And, you know, humans are affected by emotions and their emotional state. And you've only got to look at Lewis Hamilton, right? A 7-time world champion. He is statistically the greatest driver this sport's ever seen in history. But if you wound the clock back 6 months, you'd have listened to some of his interviews and said he was a broken man and you know, ready to walk away from the sport. He's come back slightly refreshed this year with a new set of regulations, a new car at Ferrari, and he's dominated so far. He's dominated the Ferrari team. So emotions and your emotional state, your mindset, plays such a huge role in performance, and it's often something that gets overlooked, but massively important.
Hamilton with 5 race podiums, 1 race win to his name so far this season. That was back at Barcelona, and has been doing a great job out there on the circuit. No pole positions yet to his name, which is very surprising to see. He's been there or thereabouts in pretty much every qualifying session, finds himself up at the front end, but just can't find that pole position lap, can't string it together when he needs to most. But Hamilton, as you said, with this newfound confidence in the car and team, could this be the weekend off the back of this summer break? He's been spending it with his new girlfriend of Kim Kardashian's been having a lot of nice time off, travelling the world at the same time, but it's back to business now.
I'm sure he's been having a lovely time with Kim Kardashian. Yeah, it's back to business. He was outdone by Leclerc in qualifying for the sprint, and again in the sprint itself, just given their starting positions, there wasn't too much Lewis could do. So in the same way, Lewis needs a really strong afternoon here to get his car where it should deserve to be. We think that Ferrari have a strong package around here. I mean, Leclerc showed it earlier on by finding his way up into second place in the sprint race. So there is performance in that Ferrari. It doesn't seem like it's quite as easy to unlock as it is in the Mercedes at a number of races, but when they can manage to get it, when they can find the key and unlock that Ferrari is unbeatable on certain occasions. So I wouldn't write either of the 2 Ferrari guys out of a pole position shout here. I wouldn't write off Max Verstappen, although he doesn't look like he's got the outright performance. He sometimes just is able to turn it on, particularly with this home crowd. And I think either of those 2 Mercedes still have a good shout at putting on the front row.
And a mistake there from Lewis Hamilton on his last flying lap. It was a big lock-up down into turn 1, taking to the gravel trap. Hopefully not much of that gravel was brought back onto the circuit. It's already dusty enough from what we can see on the surface. All of that sand being blown over from the coast that is just situated right next to the circuit. But Hamilton finding difficulties early in this qualifying run. Gabriel Bortoleto just put a lap time across the line. It was only good enough for 17th, so still in the elimination zone for the moment. But Bortoleto has been very impressive over the course of the weekend so far. It was 9th in sprint qualifying and 9th in the race. Audi proving themselves to be a point-scoring contender.
Yeah, and I was just going to say on that note, I mean, Hülkenberg currently up in P7, so at the moment, right now, Bortoleto's not going to be happy with that, because we've seen from Nico Hülkenberg what the car can do. He's sitting right behind Max Verstappen, so there's potential in that Audi. Bortoleto not yet managing to find all of that around this circuit in this particular session, but conditions are changing. As we said earlier, the wind is blowing around all over the place. That can make it tricky. The circuit conditions conditions can change on a regular basis here just because of its situation right next to the coast. So there is time to be found still, I think, from a lot of drivers on this track.
Well, it's much better at the moment from Hulkenberg. Let's hope that the car is all right and the mechanics were able to find the root of that problem that found him with a 6th lap retirement in the sprint race. Had to pull back into the pit lane, was called in by the team and did not make a reappearance after his retirement on lap 6. So it was 22nd and last for Nico Hulkenberg. The Racing Bulls cars are ready to get back out onto the circuit for their final runs in this qualifying session. Lindblad and Tsunoda 8th and 9th for the moment, 3 minutes and 40 seconds remaining on the clock, and virtually nothing separating the two of them. 8 thousandths between Arvid Lindblad and Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki Tsunoda almost just picking up where he left off. I think he's such a great talent in the car, and he's so adaptable as a driver that he's been able to jump in after being thrown in at the thick end and has just picked it up lightning quick.
Yeah, it was a safe pair of hands, wasn't it, for Racing Bulls? Seemed like a bit of a no-brainer, really. When you need somebody at short notice, he was the most likely guy, and he's doing a solid job so far. I want to have a quick shout-out for Fernando Alonso. He's currently in P12. There was a lot of intrigue around the Aston Martin team coming into this weekend around an upgrade to their Honda power unit. They've had a disastrous start to this era of the sport, so much so they almost wrote off the initial chassis design, brought a massive upgrade to the Budapest, the Hungarian Grand Prix, and that proved that it increased their performance. It brought some value to them. The next step of that package upgrade was going to be the power unit. That's the first stage of that has come to this event. I think what we've seen is that we haven't really got a proper clean set of laps out of Alonso yet to get a full read on it, but if he can hold on to P12, be around that P10, 11, 12, I think that would be an astounding result given where they were just a few races ago.
Well, of course, it's not just the power unit upgrade that they have bringing to this weekend. They have a new front wing as well, which was brought in as part of that Hungaroring upgrade to the aero package that they have for this weekend. For Fernando Alonso, it was 12th place in the first practice that we saw on Friday, and I think me and you both were very surprised by that and very up in arms by it as well. We were happy to see Alonso and Aston Martin back at the competitive edge, maybe even knocking on the door of a top 10, but then when it came to qualifying hour for the sprint qualifying, it seemed to be a completely different story. Fernando Alonso was dead last, 22nd, with a 1:16 flat.
Well, he had a technical issue where he lost straight line mode, which cost him a fair chunk of time, and I think he also made a mistake on his one flying lap, and that's what I mean. We haven't seen, I don't think, the full potential of this version of the updated package, but if the car's around the middle of the midfield, you add in the Alonso effect, there's no reason to say he couldn't be at least knocking on the door of the final part of qualifying. Even if that might seem like a stretch, to be there or thereabouts is a giant step forward.
You are completely right. Alonso, with those changes, had to start from the pit lane for the sprint race, recovered to 18th position and did a great job. Another driver that didn't find it easy in the sprint race was Lando Norris. He was struggling for pace, but not struggling for the pace on this lap as he heads through turn 13 now, with the clock dwindling down, sub 1 minute now. He'll push towards the line. It's a purple second sector, an improvement in the first. Is it an improvement to first? No, it isn't. He'll still be short of his teammate in Piastri, 800ths just over between the two of them, and cutting to the line. Lindblad in 10th at the moment. What can he get on the board? He'll jump up to 5th. An outstanding improvement there from the rookie.
Yeah, and just looking at the drop zone with just a few seconds, 20 seconds left on the clock, Bortoleto is on a flying lap now, which I think is going to make him safe. Both Williams drivers have just dropped inside that drop zone, but are now going quickly. Lance Stroll pops himself up into P16, so it's all still changing. Everybody going fast in the bottom half of the grid right now.
Behrman improves, but only enough to 18th, so that'll be Behrman out in Q1. Improvement from Albon gets him out of the elimination zone, and it looks like Bortoleto gets there. Good call there, Mark. He'll get himself up to 10th position right now and out of the elimination zone. All eyes now lie on Carlos Sainz. A new contract renewed for 2027, but can he get a result result in 2026. Qualifying here at Zandvoort, you'll cross the line 17th, so close to making his way into Q2, 200th shy of his teammate of Alex Albon, who just sneaks through and survives.
And for everything we just said about Fernando Alonso, I think he's got his timing wrong, and unfortunately he's missed out. It was a decent lap, but he's been overtaken as the circuit seemed to get quicker and quicker towards the end, and I think he's missed out now, because that is it. Everybody is in the positions they are going to finish, certainly in that drop zone. I think the only person going quickly is Liam Lawson, still on track.
Well, 16 through, which means that we lose 6 as well. Carlos Sainz being the first of those, down in 17th. Then it's Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll. Both of the Aston Martins out. One of the Haas's will make their way out of Q1. Oliver Behrman in 20th. Couldn't get that improvement that he needed. And it's going to be the 2 Cadillacs of Bottas and Perez. 21st and 22nd between the 2 of them. So 6 departures there from Q1, but for Alex Albon, he can wipe the sweat off his brow for now as he'll head into Q2 with a chance to push on forwards, but he'll need a much better lap time than that if he wants to see himself in Q3.
Yeah, he will. I think that's going to be a big disappointment for Carlos Sainz, just looking at the Williams drivers. Albon just scraping through, Sainz just behind. So it is the relative pace of those cars. Albon will get another shot at it, but I don't think he's going to trouble too many people in front of him. So, yeah, disappointment for Aston Martin to find themselves back there again.
17.
Yeah, well, it's okay. Our car was good, man.
Car was good, but not good enough to head through into Q2. Your drivers advancing on. Oscar Piastri fastest in that session, from Lewis Hamilton splitting the 2 McLarens. Lando Norris in 3rd, from Russell just beating Antonelli, once again staying on top of his teammate. Leclerc will make his way through into Q2 with Arvid Lindblad, Yuki Tsunoda, Pierre Gasly and Gabriel Bortoleto rounding out the top 10. The other Audi driver of Nico Hülkenberg will push on forward in 11th. Max Verstappen only good enough for 12th in Q1. Franco Colapinto in 13th. Then it's going to be Liam Lawson, Esteban Ocon and Alexander Albon are your 16 drivers to head through into Q2. Now, Mark, this is an interesting talking point. Racing Bulls so strong right now. Lindblad and Tsunoda 7th and 8th, the 2 of them. But Red Bull themselves, Max Verstappen and Liam Lawson, 12th and 14th. What's happening there?
Yeah, it doesn't look good on paper, does it? Of course, the only challenge for that session was to get through, so it could be that they just did enough and didn't come out again or didn't push on the final lap. So I didn't see exactly what Max Verstappen's lap looked like, but they are struggling to match the front runners. I think their genuine pace is probably within the top 6, certainly in the hands of Max Verstappen, so I wouldn't maybe read too much into that Q1 session. I think when it gets to Q3, obviously that's when we're going to see the true pace of them all, but they're not as comfortable here as some of those others. I think that's fair to say. Max Verstappen, we heard him yesterday with the regular kind of complaints about downshifts and instability on his car. Quite often over the course of a Friday night ahead of Saturday, they managed to figure some of that out and get him, up to speed. He still doesn't look quite as comfortable, but I think he'll be a lot further up when it comes to the crunch come the end of this session.
We won't worry about it for the moment, but complications could be heading the way for one of the Alpine cars. Pierre Gasly has been noted by the stewards for an unsafe release in the pit lane. That is due to be investigated after the session, so we'll push on for now.
We just saw a replay of it, and it did look very close. He did stop, but it meant that the car that was coming out, I think it was Hülkenberg, had to stop as well, and quite often when you affect somebody in the fast lane, it's a bit of a slam dunk, so we'll leave them to argue that one after the session. But yes, this is going to be interesting. Less cars on track, of course. We've lost 6, a little bit more space around this short lap of the Zandvoort circuit. Finding a position is still tricky, but just not quite the challenge that it was earlier on in the beginning.
Cars in the pit lane, but the party continues in the grandstands with the Max Verstappen and Dutch Grand Prix mascot dancing along with the crowd as the techno music continues to blast. Singing voices aloud. It's a loud atmosphere. It's a party atmosphere here in Zandvoort, and one that will be missed very much by everyone that has attended in the history since 2021 that it made its return. It's always been a sellout crowd. It's always been an enthusiastic fantastic crowd, and Max Verstappen, I think, will miss the energy heading on forwards for his new contract extension to 2030.
I'm going to miss it as well.
Yeah,
I know. Genuinely going to miss it. I think it's one of those places where you come and have something completely different to some of the other rounds.
Sorry, man. What the am I doing there?
No worries, it's okay. We are through. How was the goal?
That's Gabriele Bortoleto just beating himself up. He made a mistake on one of his laps through qualifying, got a great big tank slapper, lost the rear end, didn't spin off, didn't go off the circuit and managed to carry on, but he's just being harsh on himself, as they often are. But yeah, just quickly on Zandvoort, I think it's a real shame. It's one of those old school circuits. It is very narrow. It doesn't tend to lend itself to great racing, and so from the argument of we want to put on a great show with the cars on the circuit, you can easily argue there are better tracks that create a better spectacle. But I think for the atmosphere point of view and what it's done for a generation of fans in this country following Max Verstappen, this is huge, this place.
Yeah, I was just about to mention the impact that Max Verstappen has had on the sport. That impact has followed over to the Zandvoort circuit. I mean, I'm not sure about you, Mark, but I'm not even sure if Zandvoort would have ever returned to the calendar if it wasn't for the impact that Max Verstappen has had on the sport himself. And it's so amazing for all the European fans. Zandvoort's such an accessible circuit. You get fans from all over the world making their way over just for this one Grand Prix, for the pure fact of great racing, getting to see a home hero of the likes of Max Verstappen. You don't get many 4 times world champions that have their own home race, but also that party atmosphere every single night. It's almost like Monaco, where everyone goes out partying every night after the racing's done.
Yeah, and the location's great, as you said. It's very close to Amsterdam, sort of centrally in Europe, but also very close to the beach. So you can find other things to do as well as the racing. So it will be sorely missed. There are other great races on the calendar. We've got to be careful in this sport, I think, that we don't throw away too many of the old school traditional racetracks in favour of some of these more modern, maybe sort of sterile places. The sport does have to evolve, and I'm all for that. We want to grow it into new markets, but I think we've just got to be careful that we don't wake up in 10 years and go, well, where did all the old school traditional tracks go?
Well, the drivers get their decision of going for a cold plunge in the ice baths that they have in the trucks, or you can just go for the sea. It's only about a short walk away from the circuit, a short little transport, and you can take a cold plunge in the water. Might not want to on such a windy day itself. The waves might be a little bit harsh, but waves onto the circuit as drivers make their way out now. 14 minutes here in qualifying 2. 14 minutes for drivers to assert their times on the board and to find out who is going to be our front 5 rows. Max Verstappen out on the track just for an outlap, and you can see how much it means to the fans as he gets a standing round of applause as he makes his way around right now.
Yeah, he's the first man onto the circuit in this session, so he's coming around. He will get some back markers coming out of the pits, but they'll get the blue flags to stay well out of his way. So he's the first man that's going to set any kind of representative lap time. I think he's either starting flying lap now, we'll find out in a moment, or is he just doing a second tyre preparation lap, negotiating the traffic. I think this is probably a tyre prep lap.
Yeah.
A lot of people over the weekend have done 2 prep laps to get the tyres into the right temperature window. It's a very short circuit, so doing it over 1 lap is possible, but it's slightly trickier. If you have the luxury of doing 2, a lot of people taking that option. And the circuit is now getting very, very busy. Every single one of the drivers on that red walled soft tyre. It's the fastest of the 3 tyres that we have. It doesn't last very long, but it will give, in theory, the best lap time. That's what everyone's choosing, as is always the case at this part in qualifying.
Well, Nico Hülkenberg might not be going for a second prep lap right now, but he pushes his way through turn 9 and into 10 now as he just about negotiates the limits with that car, riding the rumble strip on the exit of 10, using all the track available to him now. He'll pick out his brake marker, hit the brakes hard over the apex of 11, using the curbing at 12 to help rotate that front end and rear and get that accelerator planted as soon as possible.
And I'll tell you who's going very quickly straight out the blocks is George Russell. The 2 Mercedes drivers just choosing to do 1 out lap and then into a flyer, both of them going very quickly, but it's George Russell that's clearly the quicker of the 2 at this point. Antonelli crosses the line first and goes quicker of anybody, but I'm pretty sure, and there he goes, George Russell pips him by a reasonable chunk. That was a very, very fast lap straight out of the box from George Russell, so he means business.
Russell, a 1:11.959 was the time that he put on the board. We're about 4 tenths away from the pole time we saw in sprint qualifying earlier. That lap time was set by the same man himself. George Russell was the one sitting on pole. Now Max Verstappen is on a fast lap after he's got his 2 banker laps out of the way. He seems confident with the operating window of these soft compound tyres. Unlike the sprint qualifying we had earlier, no mandate in which tyres these drivers have to use.
Yeah, but he's nowhere near a match for either of the 2 Mercedes.
No.
Certainly not for George Russell at this point. He's gone quickly in the first sector. He's picking up the pace in the final sector as well. So we'll see what he's able to do as he comes to the line. But I don't think it's going to trouble anyone in the front row.
Liam Lawson's just made his way across there. It was a 1:22, so a very slow out lap and a prep lap there for him. Verstappen cuts the timing beam, and it's good enough for third, but just shy of 7 tenths off the lap time that Russell has set as the benchmark on the timing tower. Now we look to one of the midfield teams, Williams. They only have 1 driver in this session, with Alex Albon being the one of the 2. Carlos Sainz saw that departure in Q1. It was 17th position. It will start 17th for the race tomorrow, but Albon has an opportunity to push himself further forwards up the grid. Out of the final 2 corners he goes, and up towards the line. What can we see from Albon here? You'll cut the timing beam, and it is enough for 5th. Quicker than Norris, but slower than Hülkenberg.
And keep an eye on both McLaren drivers, because at the moment they're both going very quickly. Lando Norris setting the fastest sector of anybody in the first sector. His middle sector looks like it's even quicker. He's on for the fastest lap at this stage, around halfway round the lap. Piastri as well going quickly, although it looks like Norris the faster of the 2 McLarens, but keep an eye on both of them. Charles Leclerc as well, who will cross the line ahead of the McLarens, looking like he could well mix it right at the front here.
Let's see what Leclerc is able to put against his name. That fastest second sector that he had is very swiftly taken away from Lando Norris, but he matches it with a purple third. Leclerc sets the current fastest time for the moment, just half a tenth quicker than what George Russell was able to produce out of his Mercedes, but the Mercedes power car of the McLaren is going to be next to the line for Lando Norris, and he does one better, 1:11.86. Lewis Hamilton can't get quite low, just breaks the 1:12 barrier, and that'll get him enough for 4th position. But his Aussie teammate of Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, is on an absolute flyer right now, with an outstanding middle sector.
And he's done it. Piastri sticks it right at the front. As things stand, the 2 McLarens faster than anybody else, but it's mighty close between the top 3 or 4, just around a tenth, covering 5 drivers, just over a tenth. So not a lot in this. This could go any which way as we get into the final part of qualifying.
Now we're getting to the rear end of the first stint of this qualifying session. 8 minutes and 40 seconds remaining on the clock now. Your drivers in the elimination zone could change very quickly, but for the moment it's going to be Hülkenberg, Ocon, Albon, Lindblad, Tsunoda and Bortoleto. Those last 3 drivers have not set a time on the board yet, but here comes Lindblad to the line. He will jump up to 7th and get himself safe for the moment. What can his Japanese counterpart do? Yuki Tsunoda just negotiating his way through the middle sector at the moment, tight to the apex there through 9. You'll let the car drift wide on the exit, back across into 10, gets the car rotated in. Late apex allows him to get a straight line exit and on the accelerator as early as possible. Only 100th off the lap time of Pierre Gasly. Gasly finds himself in 10th for the moment. Tsunoda a little bit deep into the apex of 11 there, which hindered his entrance into 12. Had to correct the steering quite a lot there, but let's see if the run out of 14 is good enough to get him out of the elimination zone. It was 15 for Tsunoda. It's only good enough for 11th, so still sits in the elimination zone, but 7 minutes and 30 seconds left. He'll have another chance to go again.
Yeah, and just as we were just about to say, now it's the calm before the storm as everybody returns for a sort of reset and another go. Bortoleto pops in a quick lap to get himself up into P8, and that bumps Pierre Gasly in the Alpine, the only Alpine with the updates on the car this weekend. He's down now into P11, so both Alpines as things stand in the drop zone, along with Yuki Tsunoda, Hülkenberg, Ocon and Albon.
I know you said not to read into that Q1 session too much, But Verstappen and Lindblad, the two drivers in the danger zone right now, 9th and 10th, right on that elimination barrier, and Lawson are only 600ths away from the time of Gasly. Verstappen in 9th for the moment, Lawson, the driver, in 10th. Both of those Red Bull cars being in the garage for the moment, so we will see them reappear onto the circuit for a one last dash to the line. It's all smiles on the face of the mechanics in the garage. No one's seemingly too worried there in Red Bull. So are they hiding some pace that we haven't quite seen yet?
Yeah, I don't think they're hiding anything. I think you're right. You know, as I said earlier on, they're clearly not comfortable, but the thing that they will take some confidence from is it's still mighty close. I mean, if you look at the people around Verstappen and Lawson, doesn't take much. A couple of tenths will move them halfway up that top 10. So they might know something, that they might know where they've got some time left on the table. They might know, Verstappen himself might know where there's a little bit more to be had. They're just uncovering a brand new set of the soft tyres now on his car. They're about to send him out. Looks like he's going to go early again. So we'll see. We're about to find out what they've got, because this time it matters. If you're not inside that top 10 as the clock gets down to 0 and you see a checkered flag, then you are not taking part in the final part of qualifying.
If we look across the garages to the sister team of Racing Bulls, the only driver that's safe for the moment for them is going to be Arvid Lindblad. Yuki Tsunoda was just not able to tie that lap together that he needed to get himself through into Q3 just yet. First cars back out onto the track now here in Q2 with 5 minutes and 10 seconds ticking down on the clock. Your safe drivers for the moment are Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. Then it's going to be Leclerc, Russell and Hamilton rounding out the top 5. Hamilton just makes his way back onto the circuit with Antonelli, who's already out there. Lindblad in 7th, Bortoletto, the only Audi safe for the moment. Then it's going to be the two Red Bulls of Max Verstappen and Liam Lawson. Verstappen and Lawson both out there very quickly, very attentively out onto the circuit, as they want as much clean air as possible. Don't want to risk anything, because if you risk anything here, especially in the treacherous position that they are in, if anything goes wrong on that flying lap, that's your qualifying out the window, and that's potentially not moving on into Q3.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually an exact replay of the way they all came out at the beginning of this session. It's the two Red Bulls led by Verstappen, then it's the two Mercedes, Antonelli and Russell, and then it's the two Ferraris. So it's one of those 2x2 sections as we often get, where a team strategy is to either go early or to wait and hang on a little bit. But it's the two Red Bulls that go first. We'll have a quick look. I think last time out they took their 2 warm-up laps before they went for a flying lap on the Red Bull side. On the Mercedes side, they decided to go straight for it after 1 flying lap, so we'll keep an eye out on that. I think they are going again at Red Bull for another tyre preparation lap, and actually it might be that Mercedes are doing the same this time around.
The projected knockout time for this session is going to be around a 1 minute 12.4 seconds. That would mean that any driver below 7th position needs to be worried about where they are right now. So Arvid Lindblad on downwards need to get back out onto this circuit and get another lap time, possibly an improvement on the board if they want to be confident to make it into the first 5 rows for the Grand Prix tomorrow. I think every driver will be extra on edge here in Zandvoort. As we've mentioned multiple times, ever since it's returned in 2021, every race has been won from pole position, and that includes the sprint race this morning where George Russell had no trouble and a lights to flag victory. Could it be the same for tomorrow? Well, we'll have to find out who's on pole first.
Yeah, exactly. And on that note, everybody going around doing their 2 preparation laps this time around. The first man to start breaking the timing beacons for real is Max Verstappen. So he starts his flying lap now. This is after 2 tyre prep laps. He goes flying through turn 1 and turn 2, nice and tidy around the outside of turn 3. That's a big banked corner. The fastest way round is always got caught up in some traffic. Is that Gasly? One of the Alpines. Looks like it may have got in his way. I'm sure we'll hear from him if it did, but he's still flying round about a 1/10 of a second off the pace as things stand going into sector 2.
Even with that little hindrance, still a personal improvement in the first sector. Personal improvement as well from teammate of Lawson, who's out there right now. Antonelli does even better, but Piastri tops them all with a new fastest sector 1. I was about to say that Lindblad's not out on the circuit, but now emerges from the pit lane. Leaving it late is the Racing Bulls driver, who's currently 7th in the order, so needs to be careful if he wants to make his way into the final qualifying dance in just a few moments' time. 1 minute and 40 seconds remaining on the clock. Verstappen makes his way out of the exit of 14 and up to the line. It's a brilliant improvement. It's Max Verstappen-esque. He gets himself up to 3rd, and that should make him safe. Lawson finds a little bit of traffic out of the final corner, but should still improve on his lap. He improves to 7th. Is that going to be enough for the substitute into that second Red Bull seat? Antonelli out of the final corner, as well as Norris. He'll cut to the line and get an improvement on his time. First overall, even with a yellow sector 1, so didn't improve in the first sector, but was able to string together the rest of the lap to improve and beat his teammate.
Yeah, both McLarens all of a sudden looking really good. Looking good on this soft tyre in these conditions. It's not what we've been able to say all weekend long, but of course they did manage to do something special in qualifying yesterday. Lando Norris on the front row. So it's nice to see both McLarens looking like they're back at this stage. Let's see, there's nobody else at the moment looking like they're going to trouble those top 2 or 3 cars. Down in the drop zone, Pierre Gasly's on a decent lap. He's looking to dig his way out of there. In doing so, he might put Gabriele Bortoleto under threat, but he himself has put in a good lap, bumped up 1 place, and it's now Lindblad that's right on the cusp.
The top 3 for the moment filled by both the McLarens and the Red Bull of Max Verstappen, the only 2 constructors to have won here at Zandvoort in the modern era. McLaren, the second most successful constructor at the Zandvoort circuit, with 5 race victories under their belt. 2 of them coming in 2025 and 2024. Piastri as of late, Norris in that 2024 year. But the clock now strikes 0. Drivers peel off into the pit lane, and it looks like this is going to be the finishing order that we have. Nobody on an improvement of a lap, which means that Arvid Lindblad might just sneak through in P10, but that also means that his teammate of Yuki Tsunoda will be eliminated in P12. Just in front of him, Pierre Gasly is going to be the first of the eliminated drivers in 11th, down to Yuki Tsunoda, Hülkenberg, Colapinto, Ocon and Albon. Those are going to be your 6 drivers eliminated from Q2.
Yeah, and I think Nico Hülkenberg's got every right to be a little bit disappointed. Well, we didn't see it on our broadcast, on our pictures, but George Russell had a big massive lock-up and went right off the circuit, managing to avoid the barriers, but destroyed a set of tyres in doing so. That was going into turn 1, I think, by the look of it. But yeah, Nico Hülkenberg only down in P15 and so P13 and so eliminated. We've seen better pace from Hülkenberg, and Gabriele Bortoleto proving that that is a top 10 car in the sister Audi, so I think Hülkenberg will be a little bit frustrated at that one.
I think 9 might be the lucky number for Gabriele Bortoleto. He was 9th in sprint quali, 9th in the sprint race, and makes his way through to Q3 in P9 as well. Bortoleto continuing to prove why he's a prevalent driver in this field, and Audi have a lot of confidence behind him as well, as he constantly is developing as a driver and also helping the team develop overall. If they're able to get these results and these point scoring finishes out of their drivers in the last 3 races, they've finished in the points with at least 1 driver each time.
We're lucky.
We're lucky, he says. Well, look, I mean, you take the luck when it comes, but I think getting into Q3, you need a little bit of luck sometimes, particularly when you're in that midfield battle. We said earlier on, it's so tight between those teams that you're scrapping over 1 or 2 places, and I think the fact that he's managed to get himself through, he was actually on a pretty decent lap just before the end. I think he may have aborted it knowing that he was safe, so I think, yes, there's a bit of luck, but I think you've got to make that luck and then you've got to capitalise on it when it comes.
Yeah, Arvid Lindblad clearly feeling that he personally hadn't done enough to get through to Q3. Well, he does with a little bit of luck, as he says on the radio. The only driver from Racing Bulls to be heading through into Q3, as we mentioned, Yuki Tsunoda, on his return to the sport, will be knocked out in P12 and will start tomorrow's race from the 6th row of the grid. A difficult track to overtake at, and has a lot of work to do if he wants to make his way through into the points. It only sounds like it's 2 positions conditions to make up. But at Zandvoort, that is the world to conquer, to make up 2 places. To even finish in the points would be a huge feat for Yuki Tsunoda. But he's a talented driver. He's definitely got the possibility to do so. And with the interchangeable conditions, we know anything can happen here at Zandvoort. Max Verstappen will be wanting to give a good sign-off, and proving that maybe he has the pace to give a good sign-off with that P3 lap that he punched in there.
Yeah, and I think, when you talk about the race, the Grand Prix, it's a long race. There's a lot of laps, there's a lot of time. There is a strategic element to it that we didn't get in the sprint today. The sprint is literally a sprint, as it says as it says on the name on the side of the tin. It's one of those things where it's a lights to flag, all-out sprint with just the drivers doing their thing. But in the Grand Prix, you get tyre strategy. We're probably looking at it's a borderline between a 2 and a 1 stop race around here normally. But if you get a 2 stop, there's a huge amount that can play out in terms of strategy. The rain and the weather can easily play a part. So I don't think this is a write-off yet. I think, qualifying super important. To get onto the front row is going to be massive. Whoever manages to do that today will sleep very well over the course of Saturday night. But I don't think it's a complete write-off for those who don't, just given that there's a bit more at play than there was in the sprint earlier on.
Tyre strategy for Sunday is going to play such a huge feat, and especially if there's going to be interchangeable conditions, as just over 1 lap, if it's transitioning from dry to wet and you get caught on those dry compounder tyres. When we last saw it in 2023, the average time lost was 23 seconds in just 1 lap. Now that's just 1 lap of being on dry tyres when the rain is falling. It falls torrentially here in Zandvoort. If you start to see a few spots of rain come down, well, you better sprint for cover, because it comes down in a ton here at Zandvoort. We saw that after the checkered flag at the sprint race. It went from blue skies and sunshine to torrential rain in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, it really did. The timing was unbelievable earlier on today. As George Russell, I think, said in his post-race interview, had that rain come 1 lap earlier, the end of that race could have been completely different. So
would have loved that.
Yeah, we'll wait and see what happens tomorrow. But back into today, we are rolling towards the final part of qualifying. Just our top 10 drivers left, going for a shootout for that all-important pole position around the Zandvoort circuit. Just a few moments to wait as all the drivers sit in their cars, all seat belted up, helmets on, sitting there focusing on data screens and getting themselves in the right zone as the crowd around them sing and chant and dance and go crazy, as they always do here.
First karts now being released onto the circuit. Both the Mercedes make their way out, as well as the Red Bull driver of Max Verstappen onto the track. Well, Mark, I haven't thrown you under the bus yet. This
sounds like you're about to.
Well, no, I'm about to. I'm trying to set it up nicely. I'm trying to sugarcoat it here for you, Mark. I haven't thrown you under the bus yet by asking for your predictions, but the red light still shows at the end of the pit lane, and I feel like we're in a good position to start making some predictions. Sessions are under the belt. Who are we going to see on pole? Mark Priestley, who is your money on?
Well, all the evidence is pointing towards the McLaren drivers, isn't it, right now? Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri both looking very, very good. But as we've seen over the course of the weekend so far, George Russell seems to be very comfortable, more so than his young teammate in a Mercedes. And I don't think I'd write off Charles Leclerc. And it sounds like I'm really sitting on the fence here. I'm not going to write off Max Verstappen either, because he can really throw something together in front of this home crowd. But if you really want to nail my colours to a flag, I'd have to go with Lando Norris. How about you? What are you saying?
Well,
if you're going to throw me under the bus...
No, that's not fair. You don't get to throw it back to me. I'm the one that asks the questions. Yeah, no, I'll give you my predictions. Max Verstappen, I'll pin one driver straight there. I'm not going to beat around the bush on 5 other drivers. Max Verstappen, I will say, is my man for pole position. Clearly shows that he has the 1 lap pace if he's able to string it together, and also the most successful driver at this track in the modern era. Since 2021 of its return, Max Verstappen has not finished outside of the top 2 on a Grand Prix Sunday at his home circuit, and with it being the last race of Zandvoort, maybe he just has a little extra motivation. All
good stats, I'll give you that. I mean, can you imagine the roar if he manages to do it? Yeah. Speak of the devil.
George crying, great, but that pit release, but it's nothing unsafe.
No, nothing, Max.
That's hilarious. What happened there was George was coming down the pit lane, and Max Verstappen was released from his garage. It was close. I saw it. It wasn't an unsafe release, but what he's saying is George is probably going to be on the radio crying about it. There's no love lost between those two, but I don't think anyone's going to get into trouble for that one. So here we go. There are just under 12 minutes on the clock, and we've got drivers on circuit, as you can hear in the background, warming up their tyres, getting everything ready before setting their most important laps. They could be the most important laps of the entire weekend, because it decides where you start a race when overtaking is very, very difficult to do.
Well, not quite a roar from Verstappen, more of a grumble that we've heard on the radio so far, but we haven't heard much from Kimi Antonelli. Hasn't quite been able to topple his teammate as he would have been wanting to continue on form with.
Is it still looking to hit?
Yeah, so we expect it to be within the last 5 minutes of the session.
Absolutely brilliant. I mean, look, we had the same radio calls to drivers in the early part of the sprint earlier on today. Sorry, the latest part of the sprint earlier on today. And as we just mentioned, the rain came the lap after they'd finished, and it was torrential. In the last 5 minutes of this session, we could be expecting something, and that could really throw the cat amongst the pigeons.
Well, they've been doing a lot of dancing in the grandstands. I wonder if there's been a few rain dances going on in the grandstands as well, which does make sense why we see all of the drivers out on the circuit right now. Uncharacteristic for a Q3. Normally we would see the drivers sit in the pit lanes for a little bit longer, wait for the track to develop and the temperature to rise a little bit before they make their way onto the track for their hot laps. But with that rain incoming and pending over the circuit in the last 5 minutes, these opening stages and these laps are going to be so crucial. Every lap counts right now for these 10 drivers.
Yeah, it really does. You've got to make the most of the circuit in its best conditions. That could be right now. Max Verstappen is continuing to do his 2 preparation laps of the tyres. That's an extra lap. That's an extra couple of minutes into the session where we are edging towards rain, whereas Kimi Antonelli in the Mercedes going for an early flyer.
Well, I'm not sure if we're going to have an extra couple of laps, as rain is reported on the main straight right now. It's obviously not anything torrential to stop the drivers from completing these laps on the slick tyres, but even more urgency on why these laps need to be done now. Antonelli is not playing around as he punches home a fastest first sector. Fastest second sector currently belongs to Lando Norris, who makes his way out of the final corner and up towards the line. He also secures it with a purple sector 3. A 1:11.344 is the time to beat set by Lando Norris. Antonelli can't match the second sector that was done by Norris, but we have now officially beat the lap time that set us on pole for the sprint qualifying yesterday. Antonelli will round the final couple of bends and up towards the line. What can our championship leader get on the board in early doors? It's only enough for third. He would have been hoping for so much more, would the Italian, the 19-year-old who leads the championship by 53 points, especially if heavy rain is coming in. He needs to be doing better than that. He needs to be on the same level with his teammate, as George Russell just gets himself into a front row position, just shy of 2/10 of the lap time of Lando Norris. The Ferraris have also been quick this weekend, as Charles Leclerc's now going to rotate his way around turn 14. It's only enough for 4th, but that continues to tumble our championship leader of Antonelli, who now drops down to 5th. Racing Bulls, Arvid Lindblad, Lone Star, what can he do across the line? It's enough for 8th. He would have been wanting a little bit more. Is there even anything more to get out of that Racing Bulls car? We'll see if there's anything more to get out of the Ferrari, as Lewis Hamilton's going to be the second of the manufacturer to cross the line. It's a 1:12.1 and only puts him P8.
Yeah, nobody able to trouble Lando Norris. It was a very, very strong early lap. I mean, if this rain does materialise, that could be the best of this circuit. So at the moment, we've got Lando Norris from George Russell, Oscar Piastri in 3rd, then it's Charles Leclerc, Kimi Antonelli, Max Verstappen, then it's Lawson, Hamilton, Lindblad and Bortoleto. That's the way it stands right now, with 7.5 minutes still on the clock. Everybody back in the garages, a fresh set of tyres on, but are they going to have time before any rain starts to deteriorate this race racetrack.
Well, it's a mad flurry down in the pit lane as all the teams are scrambling to get their cars back into the garages and switch the tyres as quick as they can. It's not just rumours, the teams all believe it themselves. They all have the data on the pit walls that the rain is about to fall down now. It's not just stressful for the drivers, but also stressful for all the teams and all the mechanics. I'm sure you're glad you're not one of the mechanics now when you're sat in the commentary box with me.
I think you sort of love these days because you get the opportunity to make a difference if you get it right. But of course you get it wrong and it can have catastrophic effects. Personally, I'm wondering now whether Max Verstappen made a mistake on sticking with his 2-lap preparation. Of course, that's the way they've been preparing all of their laps, so that's what they're used to. He wants to stick with that, but it may have just cost him the best times that those circuits had to offer, because it was the guys that only did one. It was the Mercedes of Russell, and it was the McLarens of Norris and Piastri who went straight out, did a flying lap, and that's where the time seemed to be.
Well, no time being wasted in the pit lane as the drivers now re-emerge onto the circuit. We get a weather alert update, and a cheeky George Russell is going to sneak his way past one of the McLarens on the pit exit after he crossed the pit limiter line, makes his way around, as we've seen multiple times before. Max Verstappen, that seems to be his textbook move. He loves to do that and has done over his history in Formula One. Weather update, rain expected in 1 minute, and with 5 minutes and 50 seconds remaining in this session, there is no time to waste. George Russell is desperately trying to get past the McLaren driver in front of him. Now, which of the McLarens is that? That's going to be Lando Norris. He's trying to make his way past Lando Norris, as he doesn't care about a slipstream at this point, just wants the track position and get to the line before the rain starts to fall. Lewis Hamilton's going to be a straggler out of the pit lane there. Didn't make his way out with all of his competitors as well. Makes his way out of the pit lane now, though. We'll have a look over your top 10 before the laps start to flood in and before the rain starts to flood down onto the circuit. It's Lando Norris who currently leads the way from George Russell, Oscar Piastri, Charles Leclerc and Kimi Antonelli in P5. Your bottom 5 of the top 10 is Max Verstappen, Liam Lawson, Lewis Hamilton, Arvid Lindblad and Gabriel Bortoleto.
Yeah, so Russell and Norris had to give up that fight. It was Norris that went through first. Russell had to back off. So it's Lando Norris that's going to be the first man to go round setting any sort of representative lap. He's on it now. He's coming through the first couple of corners, round the banks, turn 3, gets a nice good exit. So we're following him now on our screens. We'll talk you through it. He's nice and clean and tidy so far. George Russell is the next car behind him. He's following him, and it's looking like Norris is not yet improving, but a man on a mission right now is George Russell. He's had a very good first sector. Lando's actually matching him now in the middle sector as well, so those two look like at the moment they're going to be fighting it out for pole. But what about Oscar Piastri? In fact, everybody now, the top 4 or 5, all going more quickly than they did in the first run. This is still all to play for.
Taking turns and trading purple sectors as Russell lit up purple in the first sector. Norris lights up purple in the second.
Antonelli.
It's going to be so close between them as Kimi Antonelli pushing on forwards. He jumps to the top for the moment. George Russell and Lando Norris, what can they do? Norris crosses the line now and will jump Kimi Antonelli for second. Can his teammate respond? Yes, he can. George Russell is going to get on top and use his experience to his advantage. He will topple Antonelli. Antonelli just had a few moments of glory in P1. Lando Norris and George Russell say no, these are our positions, and the McLaren hits the front once again. Liam Lawson crosses the line. Not much of an improvement from him. He'll stay down in 7th, and Arvid Lindblad is looking to close his lap as well. Can the Racing Bulls improve from that bottom 10th position?
And we've got this unusual situation now with 3 minutes still on the clock. Everyone's had the best out of their tyres because they were expecting the rain to come. It hasn't really materialised. A couple of odd spots that we saw on the camera lens, but nothing to deteriorate the circuit in any meaningful way. So can anyone get another flying lap out of these tyres? There's no time to get back into the pits and have another set. Can anyone get anything out of these on a second run?
Well, this is going to be very telling if the track is still in a position to improve on your lap time. Charles Leclerc is out there at the moment. He has a personal improvement in the first sector. Yes, it's 1/10 of what Lando Norris was able to secure on his lap, but what can he do? And these final two sections. It looks in the final two sections that's where the rain is starting to fall, as a couple of raindrops now land on the camera lens on the T-cam of Charles Leclerc. Lewis Hamilton's pushing strong as well in the middle sector, continues to fall off the lap time, just about 4/10 of what Norris has been able to do now. Mark, I don't think the track's in the same position it was.
No, I think this is it, unfortunately. Well, unfortunately for some, not unfortunately for Lando Norris, who currently sits at the top of the timing sheets. Neither Ferrari is going to trouble the front runners. Lewis Hamilton's managed to put something in. Can he pip his teammate? He's not managed to do it all weekend so far. So Leclerc is currently sitting in P5 with his lap. Lewis Hamilton coming towards the end of his lap now, and he is pushing still very, very hard, Lewis Hamilton. He's a long way down off the leader, but I think for his own personal benefit, he'd love to see himself get a little bit closer to Leclerc, because he struggled all weekend long. He comes through the final banked turn, 13 and 14 now, slingshot onto the start-finish straight, and will get him crossing the line, and he does. He pips his teammate, getting himself right in front of Leclerc for, I think, possibly the first time this weekend.
He improves to 5th, but only the Ferraris are out there on the circuit. All the other drivers are now back into the pit lane, and strangely, with still 1 minute left on the timer, Lando Norris...
Okay, that was Paul.
Hold on. Let's try to arrive.
Well, he clambers out of his car, and he can now celebrate with the team, as they may have been 4 weeks apart, but it's back-to-back pole positions for Lando Norris in Formula One. McLaren back on the form that we've seen in 2025, 2026. It's a new era, but still the same results that we expect from the Titan constructors. Lando Norris will sit on pole position here at Zandvoort for the last ever Zandvoort Grand Prix in 2026. In previous years, they've all been won from pole. Norris, he has to feel more confident now.
I mean, I don't want to be really smug, I don't want to be that guy, but who called it? And look, we got this bizarre situation. There's still 10 seconds left on the clock, and we're wrapping up the show. We're talking about what sort of order the grid is. The drivers only now are getting out of their cars as the checkered flag falls now. It was a weird one, wasn't it? We all thought the rain was going to be more intense. It did start to spit, but nothing that was too dramatic. And so because they'd gone early, they'd taken the best out of their tyres and perhaps the track, and so the qualifying, the pole setting laps all came way before the checkered flag.
Well, you get your pole position prediction there, Mark. That's why you're the expert sat alongside me. I'll give you your chocolate bar once we're out of the commentary box. But Lando Norris will sit on pole position for Grand Prix Sunday here in Zandvoort, with George Russell alongside him. Once again, a British lockout of the front row, but the two drivers switch positions for this time, not in the sprint race. This is for the big points. Kimi Antonelli will start from 3rd with Oscar Piastri alongside him. Only Mercedes and McLaren on the front 2 rows. Then it's Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc on the 3rd row, 5th and 6th. Max Verstappen and Liam Lawson locking out the 4th row, with Gabriel Bortoleto and Arvid Lindblad rounding out the top 10 there in your Q3 session. Finally gets a drink of water, as the rain seems to have held off here, not as torrential as we saw from the downpour earlier on. Antonelli going over and congratulating his competitor of Lando Norris, as it's great to see the camaraderie between all of them. All the drivers getting on really well. Great sportsmanship between all of them, but that all goes out the window once the green lights and the lights go out on the gantry for the race tomorrow.
Yeah, this was an important session, as we said earlier on. Lando puts himself in the very best position for tomorrow's race, and I can't wait for it. George Russell also good, and Kimi Antonelli be very happy to be close as he is to his teammate and to the front, because from 3rd on the grid, from that 2nd row, anything can happen.
Anything can happen indeed. All of the drivers now getting their time to relax out of the cars. Well, they got an extra minute to relax out of the cars, as qualifying seemed to end a little bit early with the rain looming above and the track not in a competitive condition. Both of the Ferrari drivers unfortunately found the short end of the stick when they drew their laps out there. Lewis Hamilton, I'm sure, will be kicking himself that he was the last one out onto the circuit and actually straggled out on the pit lane. What could have been for the Ferrari drivers?
Yeah, I'm not sure they might have troubled Norris, but I think Leclerc, who's been the more comfortable, might have thought he could have been a bit further up. But I think Hamilton will take some solace from the fact that he's beaten his teammate. But yes, running late in that session certainly wasn't the right play, and they'll look back on that, I'm sure, and perhaps question their tactics there.
Well, the fans watch on as we get ready for the post-qualifying interviews, where we'll get an insight from our top 3 starters. Once again, that's going to be Lando Norris, George Russell and Kimi Antonelli. So all Mercedes-powered engines in the first 4 positions. Front 2 row locked out by that Mercedes powertrain. It's Mercedes and McLaren up at the front end, the 2 contenders that you need to fight with. In terms of the constructors, though, McLaren 3rd in the constructor standings right now, a little bit back off Ferrari. But for the drivers, they'll get ready for their interviews now and get ready for race day tomorrow with Guido van der Garde.
Lando Norris, you are on pole position for the Heineken Dutch Grand Prix. You must feel happy about that.
Yeah, it doesn't get any better. So a little surprised, honestly, but yeah, just a decent lap. I was pushing because you've seen how close it is, so you know every 100, 200s can make a big difference in the end. But just a good turnaround from earlier today, where I felt like we struggled a little bit. Today we certainly felt very strong, so the team did a good job, so credits to them on trying to get a little bit more out of the car, and it certainly helped me today.
Did you modify a lot with the car today towards the qualifying from the sprint race?
I mean, we had to try something, because what we had before wasn't going to be enough. So we made some small changes, nothing that was going to make us gain 2/10 or 1/10 even, but enough to maybe give me a little bit more confidence. And on a track like Zandvoort, you need good confidence in the car, and you want to attack a lot. So I felt like I could do that more today, and it paid off.
Good, congratulations.
Thank you.
George, P2, yesterday pole position, you had a win earlier today. Are you happy with the 2nd place?
Yeah, I mean, Lando did a great job, so congrats to him and McLaren. It was a strong session. I thought we had it in there just to fight for pole, but P2 I'm pretty satisfied with, especially after coming back after such a tough last few races before the break. Sort of get in my groove again, and try and fight with them tomorrow.
It looks like the summer break and the engagements helped quite a bit, not?
Yeah, maybe. So, as I said, I feel in a good place and just sort of feel myself again, which is really important. It was really nice to drive around here, and these cooler temperatures made the track feel really fast. So it was a real joy for us all to drive, and looking forward to the race.
Kimi, P3, back on top 3. Are you happy with your performance?
I mean, it was a difficult session for me overall. Always found myself in the back foot, and then the last lap did a mistake in turn 1, lost a couple of tenths, and it was my mistake, and shame for that, because we had a real shot for pole.
Do you think you could fight for pole position today?
Sorry?
Do you think you can fight for pole position today?
I mean, in Q3 I thought we had a shot, we had a chance, but when I started the last lap in Q3, I saw it was 2 tenths down in sector 1, and I was like, this is gonna be difficult, but then I was able to make it up throughout the rest of the laps. So shame for that, but all to play for tomorrow.
Well, anyway, good luck. Lando, you have a lot of Dutch fans here. Do you have a word in Dutch?
Yes, dank u wel. That's all I know.
And looking forward to the race, I think, for tomorrow, no?
I'm looking forward to the race tomorrow. It's always one of the best events here to come and see all the fans. They make a lot of noise. They're always very enthusiastic. It's a lot of energy. So hopefully we can put on a good show for them tomorrow and make it a good final race here in Zandvoort. So it's we're gonna miss everyone. So party well, enjoy the music, and enjoy the show tomorrow.
Enjoy. Good luck, guys. Thank you.
Well, he may not know many Dutch words. He lets the racing and the pace do the talking, does Lando Norris. Let's have a look over our provisional grid for tomorrow. It'll be Lando Norris and George Russell locking out the front row, with Kimi Antonelli and Oscar Piastri on the second row. Then it's going to be both the Ferraris of Hamilton and Leclerc in 5th and 6th. Verstappen and Lawson, Bortoletto and Lindblad round out the top 10 on row 5. Row 6 of Pierre Gasly and Yuki Tsunoda. Then it it will be followed by Nico Hülkenberg and Franco Colapinto. Esteban Ocon and Alexander Albon next, 15th and 16th. Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso, Stroll and Behrman on row 10, and rounding out the 22 drivers, Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez will be on row 11 for the grid. Lando Norris has now handed his pole position award, the second one of the season, the second one 2 races in a row.
Yeah, he's done a really good job. They brought an upgrade, a significant upgrade to the Hungaro ring just before the summer break, and that brought considerable performance to that McLaren. I think, importantly, it brought performance that they think they can now develop from, which is a good sign for them. Both McLaren drivers have looked strong throughout the session. I think Piastri might be a little bit disappointed to not be closer to his teammate, but if you look at the top 4, they are very close. Really interesting hearing Kimi Antonelli say he lost 2 tenths in turn 1. 2 tenths would have put him on pole. Had he not lost that and still managed to deliver a great lap for the rest of it, that's a pole position time. So interesting that he now believes he had a car capable of doing that, which he hasn't shown for the rest of this weekend so far. It's been his teammate George Russell been the lead of the 2 Mercedes. So yeah, it's going to be close, and I think whoever gets a really solid start tomorrow is going to put themselves in a very, very good position.
Mistakes define character, if buts and maybes, but it's all about who can do it under the pressure. When it comes to crunch time, it was Lando Norris who was able to get the lap time on the board by just over 1/10 over George Russell. Only 300ths separated George Russell and Kimi Antonelli, but Russell will wear the stripe on his sleeve as he beats his teammate once again in another session. But with qualifying out of the way, all attention and all sights are set to Grand Prix Sunday. 4.2 kilometres of the circuit and 72 laps. Racing will be tough. Strategy will be difficult to call. What should we expect, Mark?
Well, I think, again, all focus on the start of the race. We don't know what the conditions are going to be like, but I think if you can get a good start, that's half the battle done. I think for George Russell, he's done everything right in that inter-team battle between him and young Kimi Antonelli, the big championship rival. He's done everything right this weekend. He's beaten him at every competitive session. But of course, if Kimi wins tomorrow, if Kimi beats him tomorrow and extends a points lead, that will be a huge psychological blow to go on top of the other psychological blows he's been having for the last few months in that battle between the two. So he's done everything right, but he's got to continue it through tomorrow. I think it's going to be a battle of who can make their tyres last longer, and from the pit wall, who's going to be smartest, who's going to be most astute in making the right calls, getting strategy right, because that could change the outcome of this race hugely.
Well, it's one of these races that could be won in the first few corners, but whether we see adverse weather conditions throw a spanner into the mix, or even a safety car could completely switch it up in terms of strategies which the teams have planned. It's one of those races where the teams, yes, they'll have a base plan, and yes, they'll have options in terms of strategy, but you're almost going in blind because you never know what's going to be happening here at Zandvoort.
Yeah, I mean, yes, absolutely right. I mean, you can say that at most races. The teams are now, certainly the front-running teams, very, very good at adapting on the fly. There's some very complex and advanced systems that help them to do that. So they will have options all the way through this race. The options will be transforming as the laps tick down. It always works that way. And so, yeah, the very best teams are the ones who can react in the most efficient way at exactly the right time and deliver the right strategy that when it matters. So it's always a combination of team and driver, and that'll be exactly the same tomorrow.
Well, we'll have to wait and see what happens tomorrow. I'm going to be tender hooks until we go live at around 1:45 for the Grand Prix tomorrow. Lights out at around 2 p.m. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live. Kevin, the airwaves are all yours.
Thank you, and you only have one job to do as far as I'm concerned, and that's to keep that weather you've got with you. We don't want it for the cricket, okay? You keep that over there, and you have a fantastic, well, night as well as day in preparing for tomorrow, and have a great Grand Prix tomorrow. Many thanks to Kai and the team. Alrighty, let's look at what's going on in the County Championship. Whilst you've been away, all sorts of things.